Hello, future CRNA. Welcome back to another episode of CRNA School Prep Academy. I'm so happy you're here. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate you. And as always, if you want to leave me a review, I'd really appreciate that. This podcast is off to a great start, so thank you so much. Today's topic, we're going to cover something that's very close to my heart, as is most SRNAs who graduate, which is the topic of burnout. All SRNAs will experience burnout at various times throughout their journey. And so I think it's really important to discuss this and kind of how to continue to move forward through burnout, and maybe some things you can do that would better prepare you to handle the burnout that is essentially inevitable during CRNA school. So again, I kind of want to start this topic off by saying the most important thing you can do to kind of support yourself during CRNA school and preparing for yourself to eventually hit that burnout mark is to seek out support. Okay. You want to go into school knowing who your support system is. You want to have a very clear communication with your support system on the kind of things you're going to need during school. And I will say also, first and foremost, you may not know it now, but your fellow classmates will be some of your biggest supporters during school. And I think that is so key, is to fall back on your classmates for support during school, because there's nothing, or there's no one, I should say, that can really truly understand exactly what you're going through other than your fellow classmates. And know that no matter how alone you feel in your feelings, you're not alone. Other students feel the same way. You know, when we're feeling burnout, the last thing we feel like doing is shouting it from the mountaintops. You know, we don't go out there and advertise how we're feeling to everyone, because it's not really something you really want to talk about. You feel icky. And so whenever, you know, now as a current CRNA and a preceptor to many students, I can actually tell when my student has hit that burnout point by just looking at their face, by seeing it in their eyes. And burnout is real. It's a struggle. It's hard. It's challenging. Is it forever? No, it's not forever. It's temporary. And what I can say, you know, I had a lot of fatigue working in the ICU, meaning I would say I was burnt out as an ICU nurse, not in a sense that it was the same type of burnout I experienced in anesthesia school, but I was burned out emotionally because I found the ICU to be so emotionally draining that it was hard for me to stay positive. It was hard for me to enjoy what I did when all I saw was death and suffering all around me. So again, the burnout I experienced as an ICU nurse was very different than the burnout I experienced as a CRNA student. So what do I mean by that? As a CRNA student, you know, what I experienced was both physical and mental burnout. When I said before, my ICU burnout was emotional burnout. And for whatever reason, even though they were both not pleasant, they were both not fun and challenging for their own ways, they were different. They were very different. I think experiencing physical fatigue along with mental fatigue was a little more taxing on my body overall, as well as my mental health. You know, I definitely had issues with my mental health as an ICU nurse, but I physically felt great. And well, I'll take that back. I remember being fatigued from working night shift. I felt physically fatigued from working night shift. But it was different. It's kind of hard for me to explain. You know, I still felt like I could breathe a little bit when I worked in the ICU, sometimes as a student. Now, also I do suffer from anxiety issues in general. So that was part of my problem, I think, as well, going into CRNA school with lack thereof addressing my baseline anxiety. But I did suffer a lot of panic attacks in grad school. I had issues sleeping. I had issues with heartburn. Yeah, I mean, you know, and I could tell you all these things not to scare you, because doesn't mean your experience is going to be like mine. And as you can see, I'm happy I made the career choice I did. It didn't stop me from becoming a CRNA. And, you know, most of the CRNAs and SRNAs I speak with now and mentor, they've all experienced various types of burnout along the way. And it doesn't mean they regret their decision to become a CRNA. It's just kind of a necessary step that you have to go through as a student. And it's funny because I've noticed the students who share their experiences on social media, you kind of hear the negativity sometimes in their voices or the overwhelm. And so sometimes not that I've always kind of preached you need to reach out to current SRNAs, and you should, but keep in mind, based on where they're at in their journey, they could be sharing some of the burnout with you, which may almost give you a negative spin on school to the point where it could scare you a little bit. Okay. But if you knew something was hard before you started it, would it really change your ability or desire to want to do it? If you knew learning how to snowboard, you'd break your ankle, would you still want to go learn how to snowboard, or would you not want to do it? I mean, no one wants to break their ankle, but it could happen. I mean, you're learning how to do somewhat of a dangerous sport. I mean, snowboarding's fun, but it's hard, it's challenging, and it could be dangerous. So, becoming a CRNA, it's hard, it's challenging. Doesn't mean just because it's challenging that you're not going to do it. No, I mean, you're going to experience the challenge one way or another. You might as well embrace it and get through it. Because the sooner you embrace it and get through it, the sooner you become a CRNA. And again, everyone's experience is a little different. Some people maybe experience more burnout than others. And I think a lot of that comes back to, again, your support system. How much support are you getting at home? Are you getting the time you need to dedicate to your studies? Or are you always feeling rushed and stressed on time because you're still trying to juggle grocery shopping and meal planning and carting the kids around to different activities and cleaning the house and doing the laundry? This is the type of thing I'm talking about when I'm saying support. You need your significant other, your mom, your dad, your sister, whoever is around you most often, to know you may need additional hand here and there. You may need a grocery delivery service, and maybe that's something your parents could gift you with. They could gift you a subscription to a grocery delivery service. That would be a really nice Christmas present to ask for, because it would save you time. Is your significant other on board with maybe doing most of the meal prep? And or if you have children, is your partner or significant other on board with taking over bedtime routines or taking the kids to swim practice or whatever you have going on in your life? You're going to need additional help. You're going to need additional time. So being very clear from the very beginning is one of the best ways you can kind of prepare yourself to kind of lessen the burnout. Okay. Take some off your plate, take some responsibility off your plate. But again, once you're in it, once you're in the thick of it, once you're starting to experience burnout, the most important way to press through is to not ignore it. If you ignore it, it will only get worse. You really have to address why you're experiencing the burnout. You have to release those emotions in a healthy way. Ideally, you want to release those in a healthy way. For me, it was going to the gym, but I would actually study while I was at the gym. And that was a good way. I've always used that method of studying at the gym to relieve my stress, whether that's listening to your lectures on record in your earbuds at the gym, or whether you're on an elliptical reading over your notes. However you find ways to kind of tackle two tasks at once in a way that's healthy. Maybe it's taking your dog for a walk or going fishing. But when you go fishing, you can listen to your lecture. I mean, it might not be as good as the music you want to listen to, but it'll still allow you to study and do something enjoyable and relaxing at the same time. You don't want to completely cut out all the activities in your life that bring you joy. You want to still include those things in your life during CRNA school. I know you're going to hear a lot of people say, you can't do this and you have to say no. And don't get me wrong, you do have to say no to a lot of things that you want to do in CRNA school, but it doesn't mean cutting out everything. You really have to still take that time for yourself to decompress. So when you're in the thick of it and you're experiencing burnout, 1, reach out to your support. 2, do a healthy coping mechanism. And 3, you need to try to address what caused the burnout. So going forward, you have a better system in place to handle it going forward. Because if you don't do that third step, this is going to be on repeat, you guys. It's going to be like a broken record, and it's going to become even more exhausting. And the more exhausted you get from the burnout, the harder it's going to be to get back to your baseline. And so, for me in school, one thing we did is we took a trip. We didn't have a lot of money. We lived on loans, but me and my husband took a trip to Puerto Rico. That was relaxing to me. That allowed me to kind of regather my steam. I studied on vacation, but I still went back refreshed and relaxed. I got to see some sunshine. I got whiplash in the ocean trying to boogie board. We had fun. We enjoyed ourselves for the first time in a very long time on a trip like that. So it doesn't have to be a trip. You don't even have to take a trip. You could just do a staycation where you go hit different activities around town. Maybe go to a beer festival, maybe go to a concert, maybe go to a comedy club. Do something that you enjoy. Do something that's going to take your mind off the stress of school. Okay. You want to still enjoy your friends. Hanging out with my friends that were in school was a big part of how I stayed mentally stable during school. Was it always ideal? No, sometimes it was in a carpool ride to and from class, but that was still enjoyable to spend 2 hours in the car chit-chatting with each other on the way back from class. So finding ways to kind of incorporate things that help you alleviate stress is key to dealing with burnout. And like I said, kind of addressing the issue as far as what made you experience that burnout. I know for me, a big cause of my burnout was the pressure I put on myself to perform. It was always hanging over my head like this heavy weight of, you have to be the best. You have to do the best. You have to always be on your A game. You have to ace that test and ace this clinical day and everything. I just felt like I was on all this pressure to always be my best. And there were some days where I just didn't have the energy to be my best. And it really got to me where the overwhelm would take over and I would get that anxiety that I talked about, like I couldn't breathe. And, it was stressful, but I did that to myself. As you see, I put that pressure on me that I needed to be that way. And when reality is, I need to give myself some grace. I need to say, okay, even if I go into this clinical day and I don't know everything they ask me, let's not beat myself up and go home and look it up afterwards and be okay with that. Be okay that I didn't know the answer to all their questions. Be okay that I maybe didn't get my A line today, or maybe I tubed the goose, which is the esophagus, if you don't know. Not beating myself up for the little things, because that's what they are. They're little things. And in the big picture, I'm okay. I'm going to pass. I'm going to graduate. That's the big picture. So who cares if every day is perfect? It's not meant to be perfect. Life is not perfect. And, another thing that adds to the burnout too, is just what's going on in your personal life. Our dog got sick. Our dog was routinely sick, unfortunately, although he did live to be 14 years old, bless his heart. But I was always dealing with a sick dog who had no immune system, who would routinely get things like the mange. And so we had to take him to the vet. He'd get abscesses and all kinds of weird things that wouldn't happen to dogs, but he had no immune system. So he was always getting sick. And so not only was that stressful on me to watch my dog suffer, but I had vet bills now that I wasn't expecting to have to pay. And, so the financial burden too was also stressful. So it's like, life still happens even though you're in school. And, we did try to have a nest egg saved up prior to school for emergencies. That came in handy. Please do that. Because otherwise what we did is I always took out the maximum amount of loans I could get. Even if it was $4,000 or $5,000 that I didn't think I needed, I took it out anyways and just used it as an additional emergency fund. And to kind of start helping me, but I kept my emergency fund money separate in a different savings account than I did my routine checking account. And I also had another savings account that was just for tuition, meaning I didn't want to make a mistake and take some money out of my emergency fund or my checking fund and then not have enough for tuition. So I had 3 separate accounts in school, 2 savings accounts and 1 checking account. Savings, 1 was for emergency and 1 was for tuition. And that way, because I'm not very good at keeping balanced checkbooks or anything like that, having my money separate like that was enough for me to be able to manage it well. But being prepared in that sense too, you don't want to have a financial strain being additional stressor of what you're going through in school. So again, trying to pinpoint what's causing me to be this stress. Is there anything I can do about it? And sometimes there's not a whole lot you can do. Sometimes it's, again, falling back on your coping mechanisms, like going to the gym or reaching out to your friends, talking to your significant other. Me, I cried it out a lot of times. I mean, I don't think it's the most unhealthiest way to deal with something, but for whatever reason, I'm a crier. Like if I get really upset, I just need a good cry. Not that I do it all the time, but if I'm really over my boiling point, I sometimes just have to cry. And sometimes I do that in private because I don't want people to know. I see it, unfortunately, sometimes I think I see it as a sign of weakness, but that's just me. That's how I cope sometimes. And whether or not I want to talk about my problems is something else. I do think it's healthy to address your problems, especially with your significant other. If you're really struggling, I know if you're like me, you might not always want to talk about it because it's almost more exhausting and draining to talk about how you feel. But I do think it's good to have them know that you're struggling. And I will never forget, my husband still does it. He's so great. He's so awesome, but he'll say, what's wrong? Like he can tell something's bothering me because he knows I'm not talking about it. And so I think it's important to let them know what's on your mind. And I laugh because sometimes when I do share with him what's on my mind, I think I stress him out. And then he probably regrets asking me what's bothering me. But it does feel good to me to get it out, and it's nice to know someone else cares as well about your feelings. So having that open communication. I know a lot of people always ask me about relationship strain in CRNA school, and we were married during CRNA school, but we had been together since we were 18 years old. So we had been dating for a long time prior to our marriage. So we knew each other very well. And I think communication is always the number one key in any relationship, being open with one another. Are you happy? Are you unhappy? And why? Just knowing those things about each other, because sometimes you might not know someone else is even struggling. Because like I said, maybe they're hiding it. Maybe they don't want to talk about it, but maybe they should be talking about it. So asking those hard questions and dealing with it face on is the best way to go. I hope that kind of helped you guys kind of summarize burnout. What I will say is typically it starts about a year into clinical, about a year. So now I know a lot of programs are a little different now. Some of them are doing the D&P project up front for the first 9 months, followed by anesthesia coursework and then clinical, versus the D&P project. And then you're going to have maybe more of an integrated program where you actually start clinical and the didactic work at the same time. They're all a little different. Both of those kind of pathways of whether it's front loaded or integrated, the burnout tends to happen the worst when you're juggling clinical and potentially some didactic work. At least that was in my experience. Because the clinical aspect of it throws a whole new set of pressure on you. It's like a new job interview every single day. It's a new environment. It's scary. It's unknown. You've never done it before. Your first ruptured AAA or your first sitting awake cranie or your first Whipple. I mean, you're like, whoa, I don't know if I'm ready for this, but ready or not, here I come. So it's very intense to be in clinical. And so I do think a lot of the burnout happens during that time, your senior year, when you're hitting your specialty rotations, when you're doing your open heart, OB, pediatrics. Those are stressful rotations because not only are you still juggling all the stuff with classes and studying for boards and doing papers and your D&P project, now you're expected to be an expert in these subspecialty areas of anesthesia. And so it's just a lot of pressure. And so again, give yourself grace, deep breath, know that you're going to get through it, that utilize your resources, your support system to help you. Study coping mechanisms, make sure they're healthy. I'm not saying you can't have wine or beer. I had plenty of that in school, but just make sure that you're also utilizing some healthy ways of coping with stress, like going to the gym or going fishing or going to yoga or doing Pilates or anything that brings you happiness. Even if it's knitting. I mean, if you like to knit, make blankets, take some time to work on your blanket while you listen to your lecture. One of my things I did, which was very unproductive, but goes to show that you still have time in school to be unproductive, is I would play Candy Crush. Sometimes I would come home from clinical and sit and mindlessly play Candy Crush for like an hour. And that was like my zone out time, like check out from all the stress I went through during the day and play Candy Crush. I look back on that now and it makes me laugh, but again, was that conducive for school? No, but I needed that mental checkout because I just went through a high stress day at clinical. So there's nothing wrong with that either. And, if you have kids, your kids, they bring you tons of joy. Spend some time with them, take that time with them to go do something fun. Let yourself mentally check out for a little bit. You need to be able to check out a little bit and decompress at the end of your day. So yeah, I hope you guys found that useful and helpful, and knowing that there's an end in sight, the light, you'll see the light when you're gearing up for graduation, you're going to see that light. You're going to know it's there. Don't let that burnout get so bad to where you can't push forward. And, again, everything you're experiencing is temporary. It will go away. You're going to have a life again. You're going to be able to do all the things you want, and you're going to have more financial freedom to do those things. So hang in there. Stay strong. I'm rooting for you. I know you can do it. I know you can do it, because that's also is key, is believing in yourself. If you get so overwhelmed that you start doubting yourself, that's when you're going to struggle more. So believe in yourself. You can do this. I'm here for you. And, you know, again, reach out to your support system when you feel like you need a boost. Okay. All right. Well, that's all for this week. You guys have a good week, and I'll see you next time.